My name is Kelly McCluskey. I'm one of the co-founders of PVI Collective, and we are a tactical media art group based in Perth.
I'm Steve Bull, and I'm the other co-founder of PVI Collective, although I think it's very much an extended family of artists that we work with. We've been making works now for nearly 20 years, and the majority of those are out on the streets. PVI stands for Performance, Video and Intervention. The I originally was installation, but we very early on discovered that we were much more interested in exploring and experimenting outdoors and looking at the social and political aspects of working with that out in public space.
You know, the origins of the word public mean belonging to the people. And I think increasingly over the years, public space is a very contested space now. And we often have this joke, you know, within PVI that when we make a work outside, do we budget for fines or do we budget for permits? And it's quite funny, but in a way it's actually quite terrifying that these are the ways in which public space is policed and regulated so heavily. What are some of the creative tactics that we can bring in to kind of creatively disrupt some of that, the politics of public space? We met at art school in the UK and we moved out to Australia for a year, we said, to see how we go. All my family is out here. We made a work that we put on at Pika, and they had a season of kind of like crash test performance season really, called Putting on an Act, and it went for years and it was an amazing program, and what it enabled us to do was kind of test out performative ideas.
So the maximum length of time a work could be is 20 minutes. Yeah. We really enjoyed exploring, you know, that kind of format. From that stage, we were very interested in working with performers and artists.
Those artists are still involved with PVI today. So when you say about creative family, I feel like we really have grown up creatively together. I think one of our earlier biggest works that really challenged us and audiences was a work that we made called Terrorist Training School. And it was at the time, post 9/11, when they were looking at bringing in a lot of draconian laws relating to privacy, relating to, well, there was terror alert, threat level. There was, you know, a whole campaign that was rolled out around being alert but not alarmed. And I think we were interested in the politics of fear that was being generated as a result of 9/11. So we made a bus tour, a terror bus tour, that initially travelled around key iconic hotspots in Perth, like tourist hotspots. And the work itself kind of happened on the bus. The bus was kind of kitted out for sound, so everyone had headphones on. There was a screen on the bus, but there was also a live performer. And then we would kind of orchestrate these interventions to happen, either as the bus was driving by, or you would stop and you would walk through. It was kind of looking at how heightened that fear had become now in public space. But I guess we were trying to do it in kind of quite a darkly playful way.
It's interesting, you know, we have a very socially engaged practice. We're looking at what's happening around us now. Historically, we've looked at surveillance and the impact of terrorism. And at the moment, we've had this shift to where we're heading, looking at what might happen. And I've been very interested by a book called Four Futures by Peter Frace, and what he proposes as kind of a thought experiment around where, well, a world where we have automation and what that might impact on the loss of jobs and the impact of robots and driverless cars.
So it's a lot more future focused, but I'm not in a sci-fi way. It's kind of more social sci-fi. It's like a couple of steps ahead so that it feels palpable, it feels like it's almost there. The work that we're making is called Topia, and Topia meaning like no place, actually. It's not utopia or dystopia, but maybe there's something else. And as audience members, you're charged with the task of seeking out your own utopic future. And of course that kind of differs in terms of where everyone's at, but it's looking at the 4 futures that are laid out, exploring those as kind of lived experiences and seeing kind of like where the collective consensus is on where we're headed. And if we're headed in a particular way, is there anything that we can do to kind of pull back and head in a different direction? And what would those tasks be? What the technology is enabling us to do is look at the collective experience of audiences, and we're using the smartwatches almost as like a decision-making tool, a voting tool towards, you know, which future you're more inclined to head towards and what that might mean for you, but also what that might mean for everybody else.
So as an audience member, you meet at a crossroads, and there are 4 pathways from that crossroads, 4 roads, and we're working with the idea of the road to utopia might not be utopic.
Well, if we want to head towards, you know, a sustainable future, one where, you know, take politics out of the equation and it's much more citizen-driven, participatory democracy, what are we going to have to give up in order to get to that point? And I think if that work is really, it's setting a moral, ethical dilemma of how far are we actually willing to go to change that future, to get the future that we want, and are we willing to take responsibility for that?
I think this is a work where we would really like audiences to have a lot more agency in it. So from previous works where audiences have been encouraged to keep their headphones on, this time they would wear wearable speakers, so they would be immersed in sound and hear narration, but they would be encouraged to also talk to other audience members and also maybe form alliances.
Or resistance.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the process for generating this work, there has been just a lot of conversation, a lot of research, preliminary research. We're really interested in working with a futurist and working with particular specialists in terms of the future of technology, looking at things like blockchain technology, automation, which industry that's going to impact on the most, but also looking at a more kind of ethical future that is, you know, much more engaged with the planet in terms of its health and future sustainability. Maybe Topia could be an opportunity for us to find a sense of hope towards the future.
I think that's definitely right, yeah. The work is about a hope and actually empowering individuals to work together for a better future.
I think audiences in general are getting much braver. And that notion of participatory practice, I think in Australia in particular, is something that's really coming to the fore with a lot of artists looking to participate with their audiences, to involve their audiences. And so, you know, for us, feedback for a work like Deviator, where the challenge is for an audience to turn their city into a playground, we really weren't sure how it was going to go. Like, people rock up to the show, they come to an art space, and, you know, then they're sent outside and they're running around the streets and they're competing with each other and they're sweating, and it's a very physical, active work. And just the delight of people coming back and, you know, looking at their score on the chart in relation to everyone else and going, what did you get to do? I was chased by a clown and I had to hop across the street in a potato sack. And, you know, that kind of shared experience, it's really energizing when you see audiences come back with that kind of reaction. And audiences that aren't typical art-going audiences as well. In a kind of a subtle, cheeky way, when we talk about our audiences not as kind of ticket-buying public, but as creative comrades, I really feel like we want to make work that generates a sense of critical citizenry, so that we will get to a point where there will be a revolution, and and in generating that sense of critical citizenry, people feel empowered to enact change.
Perth has been extremely good for PVI Collective and emerging experimental arts in general. I mean, I think there's a joke about it perhaps being the capital of experimental arts in Australia, and I think that's a great label for it because it is a healthy space to try things out. You know, it's the home of Symbiotica, and we're very lucky to have that
Proximity Festival,
yes.
and, you know, so many artists who are trying to push the boundaries, and we want to support that. We want to be in amongst that. Yeah.